Hey guys, Dr. Snellgrove here, just recording a quick video about the intro for our second essay. Now, here's a bit of good news. Hopefully you remember when we had our first intro video, one of the things that I talked about, and I mentioned it in other videos as well, I believe, is my earnest belief that writing is very much something that it's a methodology, right? So many people just assume it's a talent. I either can do this or I can't do this. I can develop this talent or I can't. But you're writing things like intros, like there's a blueprint, and just as a quick, I would encourage you, if you've forgotten the blueprint, to go back and watch that video. But if you remember, one of the big things that we talked about before was you want to have a title that ideally makes the reader curious. It could be funny, it could be dramatic, it can be scary, whatever it is, something where, like, if you were scrolling past a million headlines on your phone, something that might make you at least do a double take. So a title that makes the reader curious. This is followed by the first line or first lines of your essay, the hook. The hook is there to secure the reader's attention. So in a perfect world, title makes them curious, hook gets their attention, and they're in it. They're going to read the whole rest of your essay. And then you provide relevant background info, and all of this culminates in your thesis at the end. And we talked about how everything is basically an inverted triangle leading up to that thesis. Okay, so I just want to do a quick refresher. Like I said, I encourage you to rewatch the original video if you need to. But I wanted to mention that, now that you know that blueprint, God willing, this video won't be as long. But I was going to say, now that you know that blueprint, we can concentrate more on some of the specific things that you can do with essay 2 with this format, because the blueprint doesn't change, but sometimes the best practices, like, all right, what makes for the right background information, that might be slightly different from, say, essay 1 to essay 2. So I wanted to review that with you. All right, so the title, once again, something that makes the reader curious. And you always have a lot of creative freedom with this, but in particular with this essay, y'all are picking things like, myths, right? So I've got people writing about aliens, Sasquatch, all sorts of interesting stuff like that. So if you want to, you can, it's not a requirement, but you can lean into the mysterious aspect of the title, or I'm sorry, of the subject matter for your title, right? So instead, if you're writing about the myth of aliens, so you, instead of having, a title like Alien Essay, or something like that, you can have a title like Mysterious Visitors from the Heavens, or something like that. And that ties into something that we talked about before. And yes, I realize it's easier said than done, but basically the title and the hook are the only sections, really the only sections of your entire paper where you can not only get away with being vague, but it's encouraged, because we don't call it vague, we call it mysterious, right? So we talked about looking at the intro in the first video. We looked at that sample essay, and I don't really love the title, Does Texting Affect Writing? In fact, I mentioned in the video, that's the one thing about that sample essay that I don't like, because if you're already not interested in, does texting affect writing, the title might turn you off. So there's a lot of other titles out there that are designed to make you say, wait, what? And now you want to read more. One of my favorite examples of this is an old Rick Bragg essay about crashing a car when he was much younger. And the essay has this provocative title where it's like 110 miles per hour, upside down and sideways. And so it's deliberately, the title could have been That Time I Crashed My Car, or something like that. That would tell you what the essay is about, but it wouldn't be exciting. It wouldn't be, provocative. It wouldn't be evocative, because you hear or see or read 110 miles per hour, upside down and sideways. Like, wait, what? All right, now I want to know exactly how this happened. So I'd encourage you to, leverage the mysterious aspects, exciting aspects, or even funny aspects of your own subject matter to create these titles. Now the hook. All right, so the hook is there to secure the reader's attention. Like I said, if the title makes them curious, the hook gets and hopefully keeps their attention. How you do that is up to you. I don't want to be overly repetitive. I know that's my lot in life, but there's a lot of shared DNA with the title and the hook, where, once again, how do you get someone's attention with a hook? Well, You can be funny. You can be scary. You can be dramatic, whatever it is. Now, I've done this several times today because I've been doing a lot of freelance writing. I've mentioned before, my favorite hook technique involves two things. It's asking the reader a rhetorical question and using the word you as part of it. Now, I'm very cautious about this kind of thing. Like in my own writing, I try not to have the word you appear too much in writing. I certainly encourage you guys not to do that because honestly, in student essays, if you use the word you, most of the time you're either making weird assumptions about the professor or your writing suddenly starts sounding like a Dungeons and Dragons module. You open the door, you step inside. But in the hook, you can pose a hypothetical to someone. Like I was writing an article for insurance agents earlier. And so I had a hook, not saying this is the greatest in the world or anything, hook saying like, what if you were overlooking the easiest way to expand your insurance business? And so when I do that, there's two things that are going on. When you ask a rhetorical question, humans are hardwired. We want answers. And I'm not saying that metaphorically. You ask someone a question, they're going to expect you to provide them an answer. So if you pose a question at the beginning of your essay, people are going to keep reading. They want the answer to that question. And just in case they don't, your ace in the hole is that use of the word you. If you can find some way to make the reader feel like they are part of this, then they feel like they have some skin in the game. They want to keep reading now. I'm like, what if you were overlooking these insurance agents like me? I'm leaving money on the table. I can't overlook that. So with you guys, you're writing about myths, and it's like, you could even have a hook that's talking about the subjects of myths themselves, even before you get to the specific thing. What if everything you thought you knew about something turned out to be completely wrong? And then you start talking about myths. We're going to get into the background section here in a minute, but I just want you to consider that. Because like I said, maybe I shouldn't give the game away like this, but I don't actually take off points for bad titles and bad hooks. Life is too short for me to say that I wasn't thrilled by the first words of your paper, 5 points from Gryffindor. But as I mentioned before, this is, in my always humble opinion, one of the #1 areas of skill transfer. The ability to come up with an interesting title, the ability to get somebody's attention right away. That's valuable. That's going to be every presentation you give, every essay you write, every weird Tinder message you're sending out. This is valuable info. So I'd encourage you to cultivate that skill. All right, now for essay 2, we get into something a little more straightforward. You might say background info. So if you refer back to the first video, when I do my little dorky upside down triangle diagram, I always had 2 levels of background info. And the reason for this is like, all right, the first level is general, surface level background information. If you remember the Does Texting Affect Writing article, she had a whole, paragraph like, let me explain what text messaging is, which even in 2010, when that article was written, I think maybe even earlier, that was overkill. But that was an example of basic background information. But then she moved into, some people think texting hurts academic writing. Some people think it has no effect or even helps. So that gives some people believe this, some people believe that. So you have a version of that going on here with essay 2, where the first part, and this can be short, this could be, 2 sentences, maybe if you're really efficient, but the first part would be you describing what the myth is. Because one of the big things, one of the big conceits I try to impart to students is you're writing for other people. You're writing an essay that theoretically should be accessible to others. Someone else should be able to pick this up and read it. And therefore you're not necessarily writing to me. You're not like, what does my middle-aged, professor with a PhD, know about this? Like, hey, you have to have something that like average college freshman might understand. So you got to explain the myth. If it's a super well-known thing, if it's Bigfoot, if it's aliens, maybe that doesn't require that much explanation, but you have to assume that at least some of the people that might read this don't know all about this. So you got to get them up to speed. You're not giving them the whole story in the intro. You're not giving like a whole history report of the myth, but just like, if you're writing about Bigfoot, just consider somebody that might read your essay has not heard of Bigfoot before, or at least they don't know much about it. So this is where you would tell them a bit about the myth, right? And then You need to, like, there's other stuff you can get into on the second level of background info, but basically you're going to have to touch on the idea that even though there is no evidence for this myth, lots and lots of people, in some cases millions of people, believe the myth to be true. All right. And I want to back up just really briefly. I mean, I don't think anyone struggled on the picking of a myth, but I wanted to just review, of course, for our purposes, for the purposes of the assignment, the definition of a myth is something that has no, scientific evidence, no actual, evidence backing it up. Bigfoot's cool, but the only evidence of Bigfoot is a shitty, video thing that could have been anything from decades ago. There's no actual tangible evidence. That's what makes it a myth. So, you're going to touch on the idea that people believe in this myth despite the lack of evidence. If you believe in something because there's evidence, well, it's because there's evidence. But it's a myth if you believe in it despite, there being no real evidence for it. I just mentioned that because some of you might already be changing your topics from when you sent your outlines in. That's fine. But if you're at that, is this a myth or is it not? I wanted you to have that, okay, is there actually evidence for this or no? And by the way, I hope this goes out saying, when I say evidence, I mean like documented scientific evidence. I don't mean like somebody posted a spooky TikTok video about this. That's not evidence, guys. All right. And then that brings us to the thesis. All right. So in our upside down, triangle formation here, everything has been leading up to this. The thesis is your opinion, the thing you are arguing, the thing you are going to be defending over the rest of the essay. And so in this case, the thesis needs to be about why you think people believe this myth is true despite it having no evidence. And I had to send out that come to Jesus email. Hopefully you had a chance to read it, but a lot of people, I'm not quite sure how this happened. Maybe it's my fault, probably my fault. But a lot of people misinterpreted the assignment. So I got a lot of outlines where it was like, I'm going to explain the history of this myth. That's not the assignment. I'm going to explain why the myth is a myth. That's not the assignment. I'm going to explain why the myth is not actually a myth and is actually true. That's definitely not the assignment. We literally just want you to argue why you think people believe in something, despite the lack of evidence. You believe in gravity because you observe it every day. You don't have to be a Sir Isaac Newton fanboy. It is an observable, replicable daily phenomenon for you. But if you believe in Bigfoot, if you believe in aliens, if you believe in the Jersey Devil, these are things for which we do not yet, maybe I'll just say yet, have any tangible evidence. So why do people believe they're true? Now, there's a couple of ways you can approach this thesis. There's nothing wrong with throwing out a few different things. It's like people believe in Bigfoot because of movies, television shows, and YouTube videos, or period. Something like that. That's fine. You can give a list of different things, or if you think that all the stuff you're going to talk about falls under maybe one umbrella, you can do something like that. So, for instance, movies, TV shows, YouTube videos are all a form of multimedia. So I could, using my examples here, I could have a thesis that something like many people believe Bigfoot is real due to multimedia influence or just media influence. That's fine too. But I just want to let you know, in case you hadn't read the feedback on Canvas, hadn't reread the assignment or rewatched the video, hadn't read the email, please, for the love of God, you are arguing why people believe the myth is true. So if you've picked a myth that you're interested in, you can kind of reverse engineer this a little bit. Like, how did you become aware of this? Was it movies? Was it TV shows? Was it books? Was it YouTube? Was it TikTok? Was it just people chatting, gossip, peer pressure? I don't know. It can be different things for different myths, but that is what the essay is all about. The thesis in this case is, hey, why do people believe that, you answering, I should say, the question of, why do people believe this thing despite the lack of evidence? So you don't have to use my boring, like, boilerplate phrasing here, but you can basically do the main reason people believe X myth is Y. And like I said, it could be one thing, multimedia influence, or it can be, they believe in it because, A, B, and C, or something like that. All right. I think that's about it. As always, if you guys have any questions, feel free to email me. Feel free to text me at 863-835-2399. Y'all have a good one. Bye.